That's all ILA. And it is currently 7:53 a.m. So what I'm documenting right now is an ongoing sex offense that Tracy Banks, license 9HUZ740, and apartment number 51 at facilitating venue Woodside Senior Apartments, where the documentation of a fake sun, because the natural environment does not include the presence of the sun both rising and setting at one address, like my documentation proves, okay, as a matter of objective evidence that anyone in the world can look at, published on YouTube and published on my website. But this is the P.O.C. And as she walks in and out of the apartment, again, she's monitoring. As she opens the door, this is just like pacing in and out. This is ongoing stalking with light activity. It's a sex offense. This is all criminal facilitation. They're going to asylum. She's gang stalking with the demon in 55. And she walks out at 7:50 in the morning. The demon picks up stomping as this demon walks out of the apartment. This demon walks out of the apartment monitoring what I'm doing online, which is looking at evidence referencing efforts of criminal defamation by the state, while gang stalking, which I'm documenting, remains underway. This is, again, mental illness being exhibited. This is light activity. This is pacing. And what is engineered light that you saw fanned across the ceiling, now the light activity is different. That's impossible light activity. That's gray colored light, not sunlight. Nor does sunlight come underneath a door and travel across the ceiling. In addition to that, what you will see is engineered light right here on the wall in the dark. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the lights. What you saw was a desperate act of a demon who is engaged in criminal monitoring. That's the documentation of the state of California engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring. It is the evidence to remove Paul Leon from office. It is the evidence to disband the Ontario Police Department. It is the evidence to place all of the demons at Woodside Senior Apartments in units 33 through 64, every single last one of them, are going to federal prison. Tracy Banks is going to a mental asylum based on her exhibited and long documented mental illness that is that of a psychopath, not one that is criminally insane such that she cannot appreciate the criminality and the lawlessness of her behavior. She acts with malice, which is exactly what you saw exhibited as she walks in and out of an apartment filled with engineered light. That's engineered light. That's not sunlight. You see the same light around this door frame in the middle of the afternoon while the fake sun is sitting stationary over this apartment building for the duration of the day. That's speaking to everything, by the way, that's going on at this apartment complex for duration of day and night. Now, while this demon who is monitoring what I'm doing on my phone, she immediately walks back in. Now, what is triggering to this demon is that I'm on YouTube, which is being monitored, my internet activity. And as I'm viewing evidence well, it's not evidence, I'm viewing internet content that in the subject of the video, this is typed out in the document that's going to be published to the Google Drive, because I maintain documentation regarding psychological torture, which AVANATH Capital Management is going to compensate me for. They are gang stalking, and that is evidence for damages that AVANATH is also going to compensate me for. While they're gang stalking employees, they're gang stalking residents, and while their property itself is a means of criminal facilitation of the criminal conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone, where federal group stalking and monitoring by the state of California, that is the city of Ontario, is underway. And that's exactly what's happening in engineered light that's inside of an apartment building that remains plastered on a living room wall, both in the dark, early in the morning, in the evening, and throughout the duration of the day, while the fake sun remains stationary. It's not sunlight. Neither is the gray skies creating any sort of gray colored or bright sunny colored light. It's engineered light that appears, and that you saw while the door was cracked, it was fanned, you saw the lines of light. That's all impossible light activity. It's engineered light. It's demonic. While that demon walks in and out of her bedroom, this is a gang stalking mother who's a violent sex offender, has been engaged in practicing sexual violence as a witch that is engaged in witchcraft. I want you to be clear. Witchcraft relies on sexual violence, relies on sexual activity. Those that do not consent, those that are also underage with regard to what's legally relevant, they are engaged in sexually violating children, sexually violating those that do not consent. This is how Satan, who uses people who are demon possessed, in other words, that practice witchcraft, this is how they are deceived by Satan, and they are quote unquote deriving spiritual power. It's the practice of witchcraft. This is a sex offender who's going to be incarcerated into a mental asylum, and she's gang stalking with the demon in number 55, who is not going to work, unemployed, and the state of California, the city of Ontario, is financing domestic terrorism, which also AVANATH Capital Management. All I'm speaking of are all of the intersections of the federal prosecution of the state, civilly and criminally. It is not a coincidence in engineered light under the fake sun, and also as you have seen under the fake moon that remains over me at Woodside Senior Apartments, that the entity is maintaining what is an ongoing harassing environment, which is technically referred to as amplified audible activity. As this demon Tracy Banks walks out in engineered light, which is molesting my breast, I want you to be clear, walking out of the front door is creating sunlight that's bending around in order to touch on my breast here. That's impossible light activity. It's also impossible while it shoots through a doorway underneath. Okay, the sun that's above the building does not cause sunlight to bend underneath that doorway and enter into the depths, but I capture on a daily basis. But also remember the light that you just saw. Not only does it bend into the depths on the floor, on the ground, but also on the ceiling. All of that is occurring right now through it, which is what is gray colored engineered light. And while I'm on my phone documenting in text, the demon Tracy Banks walks back in because she's monitoring, and she's also aware of the fact of the content of what I'm documenting. And so she takes it upon herself to pace in and out of the apartment, turn on the kitchen light. This is all light activity while a demon is pacing around. All she was doing was monitoring. The significance of monitoring is it is in furtherance of the state's conspiracy to murder and kidnap someone. It is not small, minor at all. This is ongoing impunity while they're doing it, while you are documenting it. This is all state conduct as well. Domestic terrorism that no mayor shall remain in office while it's happening. This is the entity that's engaging in that pattern of conduct. The demon in unit number 55 is stomping. That's amplified audible activity. The demon you've seen walking, gang stalking in plain view for the federal government to identify under the fake sun sitting on the roof. That's the demon that's intentionally stalking with audible activity. She does not care about the fact she's going to be incarcerated in an asylum and all the rest of the defendants are going to prison with her. That's the mental illness of the demon possessed, who are engaged in domestic terrorism. Her license plate is 5WUB715. A plethora of documentation putting all of the demons, Woodside Senior Apartments, AVANATH Capital Management, and the demon possessed who have been documented coming onto the grounds of this property in all of the federal facilities that are substantiated, supported by the evidence. This is speaking to the prosecution of the state, not just the demons that are living at a senior citizen complex, not sleeping, not working, gang stalking. Tracy Banks remains a part of the entity and is monitoring while she goes to work. It does not matter where you're going while you are residing at the specific environment, you're going to prison. Everybody living in units 33 through 64, and they also act with impunity while evidence is underway. The demon in 55 acting on behalf of that entity with full knowledge is still engaging in what is the elements of monitoring, for which I want to be clear, they're doing so while they're monitoring evidence, and it's relevant what the demons are triggered by. Remember, I am the target. I am the focal point. I am the source of obsession. The demon possessed are picking up activity creation, begin pacing and molesting my breast with that which is not even naturally occurring, engineer light in a gray sky. That you're already reaching with regard to, and by reaching I mean you are engaging in extravagant and you are engaging in what is extraordinarily impossible. That is absurdly ridiculous conduct of keeping a fake sun stationary, let alone it streaming across the ceiling, reaching around into the depths of an apartment and reaching around to touch all over my body while I'm on the couch inside of an apartment. Sunlight does not do that. You're doing it, not only is that occurring, you're doing it while it's a gray sky, meaning the fake sun doesn't arrive for about another 35 minutes. Okay, the entity is doing so because I'm documenting, and it is relevant what I'm doing online while they are monitoring. This is relevant to not only Title 18, Section 2261A, subsections 1 and 2. It is because they're monitoring internet on a communication device. It's also relevant the content. What is it that I'm looking at that while the demons are spying and stalking and monitoring, what is it that they're triggered by? And they're triggered by video content that's referencing the fact that my life, my documentation, in other words, the way that I actually am and the way that I actually conduct myself, the way that I'm able to document, by the way, and articulate my thoughts and feelings and experiences and what the entity is doing, contrasted with what the entity is criminally misrepresenting in courts that are going to be prosecuted for their engagement in what is the exercise of fictitious authority while they are at the same time gang stalking. Now, the content is referencing how one's good character outweighs all of the lies. What lies would be relevant? Or perhaps the lies that Tracy Banks has communicated in courtrooms in the state of California. And everybody participating in such criminal acts committed by the state that is engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, they're all going to federal prison. Every single attorney, every single court reporter, every single judge, everybody getting on the stand, everyone speaking and participating in it is engaged in the conspiracy and furtherance of malicious murder and kidnapping. Understand the purpose of gang stalking. While I am looking at videos on YouTube that are particularly triggering, especially when it's relevant to evidence that's sitting on the record regarding what is the criminal motive of demons such as Tracy Banks and the demon inside of apartment number 55 to engage in ongoing psychological torture because of what they are monitoring on the internet that's relevant to the criminal conduct that they have engaged in. I have already documented the entity gang stalking and in the morning time. This is gray skies. Okay, there's no sun yet. Okay, there's no sun ever because the entity has a fake sun that sits on from this part of the building until this part of the building, and that is over 8 hours. Nonetheless, that's the evidence that's going to prosecute the entire property, Woodside Senior Apartments, the city of Ontario, the state of California. While you open the door, engineer light is not going to, first of all, wrap in, cause light on the door in the dark. And it's also not going to be that which is molesting my breast, but it is engineer light in conformity to a pattern of conduct, both in the presence and in the absence of the fake sun. And that engineer light that I'm documenting, that you saw fanned across the ceiling, I've also documented it. Let me open the door so you can see. I've also documented the engineer light coming through the peephole. Now, the fact that it is gone is evidence is evidence corroborating the fact that, first of all, it's never occurring. The sun being over the venue does not support light shooting through the peephole, nor does a gray sky ever create engineer light shooting through a peephole. And the fact that I have that evidence sitting on the record, which I will take screenshots of, and you can look at it in the Google Drive. It's already on the record. The absence of it is speaking to that again, an inconsistent maintenance of a specific environment that is literally the supernatural evidence against the state of California. The fact that in other words, a witch coven is the state of California that is engaged in criminal targeting, criminal surveillance. It is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring, where the demon possessed are engaged in what is domestic terrorism. And it is evidence through the maintenance of a demonic environment, things that are impossible to naturally occur. I just so happen to have had the presence of mind to document it, and it equals federal prison for everybody living around me. This is a private space. The entity is also engaging in the perpetual sex offense by virtue of living around at a facilitating venue, not a private residence. While the entity is engaged in 24-hour harassment, stalking, that's psychological torture, because it's an engineered light pursuant to what I do on the internet, pursuant to what it is that I'm doing physically, and pursuant to even as I sleep and what I think about. Remember, the demon possessed are monitoring. These are demons who are being used by people. So you have a demon possessed psychopath who doesn't understand the significance of everybody at gang stalking with you. They're all going to prison for what this demon cannot seem to control, which is her stomping. Everybody's going to prison for that. It's in furtherance of murder and kidnapping by the state, who is engaged in criminal defamation, which Tracy Banks knows all about. And that's why these demons are particularly triggered by my YouTube content that is also relevant. That's why I take pictures of what it is that I'm looking at on the internet when the demons engage in what is ongoing monitoring, psychological torture, while they are providing evidence that they are monitoring, which is surveillance by the state of California. Understand how their conduct equals what is the materialization of criminal activity in the natural that is going toward what is state action, that is acting through a bunch of demon-possessed gang stalkers. Tracy Banks remains engaged in the pattern of conduct at all times. Going to work will not remove you from your criminal engagement in the P.O.C. And by the way, you're dealing with the demon-possessed who know what you're doing both in your presence and outside of your presence. This is the criminalization of that demonic conduct, which employs many things that are supernatural. My capturing the P.O.C., which is in other words, criminalizing the state's use of what is an entirely demonic environment and demon-possessed people to psychologically torture an American citizen in order to criminally defame that person, if not murder them and kidnap them and place them unjustly in a facility while they're all demons targeting someone. That's literally, put in plain terms, what the state of California is doing at Woodside Senior Apartments at 408 West G Street in Ontario, California. So this light that you see is sitting in the dark. This is what I have already documented coming through a peephole. You can't see my hand right here. Let me turn the light on. I've documented. Oh, we've got a little trickster here. She's put something in the peephole. So let me take this out because the demon knows that I document engineer light coming through a peephole, which is a scientific impossibility. Oh, there we go. Here we go. So this is engineer light shooting through a peephole, and this is the things putting. Let me document that. The little piece of paper that the demon puts in the peephole. That's because the demon knows that I'm documenting her. Okay, so the light's on. This is never the product of sunlight during the day. It's never the product of what is a gray sky. Okay. The entity that is the Ontario International Airport, that is the state of California, is amplifying plane activity. That's impunity. That's why the Ontario airport is going to be shut down. The Ontario Police Department is going to be disbanded. The Ontario Fire Department, full of demons, gang stalking using fire trucks and a fire station, a waste of money in the city that is used as a means of criminal surveillance, and the demons who are obsessed. Ongoing criminal conduct while you're being documented and the feds are going to prosecute you is evidence of the demon possessed who are obsessed. That's a criminal threat to your life, to an American citizen's existence, and their liberty and well-being and right to not be subject to it, while the demons cannot help themselves because they continuously use city resources to engage in criminal conduct. And that's what's relevant with regard to amplified plane activity and engineered light in concert with the people of the state. They're all going to federal prison as well. While the state is gang stalking with planes, the people are going to federal prison. While the entity is gang stalking through the residents, these people are going to federal prison. While the entity is gang stalking through all the residents and the employees and the people that come on the property and fly over the property, AVANATH Capital Management is going to compensate for damages. That's how that works. It is currently, I want to be clear, while you see engineer light coming through, engineer light is molesting my breast. This is not sunlight. All right, and this is the light activity that remains through this peephole in the presence and in the absence of the fake sun. Sunlight is never going to shoot through a peephole under any circumstances. This is the evidence of what Tracy Banks is doing. She's gang stalking her own daughter. Mentally unstable psychopaths like Tracy Banks present a threat to themselves and the American public. She's going to be placed into a mental asylum. And the fact that you're capturing amplified audible activity, ongoing pacing, molestation via engineer light, this is all psychological torture, as my body is being violated for criminal purposes. And then the entity has the audacity to falsely depict your character in court hearings that I have no part of, no knowledge of. That's also by design. There are many laws that shall change based on what the state of California has been practicing as a system, so that no one else can be subject to the criminal engagement of trying to steal property belonging to a target individual, criminally defame a target individual, while they seek to gang stalk you at the same time and falsely depict your character in those corrupt courthouses. I want to be clear, this is all triggered by what the entity is monitoring, and that is my YouTube content. I'm looking at videos on YouTube, and as I'm looking at videos that happen to have titles that are in reference to the criminal activity that the entity has engaged in. That's why I take pictures of it, pay attention to. I'm talking to the feds right now. You're paying attention to the subject matter of what it is that I'm viewing, because I am always the focus. What it is that I'm doing is the focus. What it is that I'm viewing, what am I documenting? What am I thinking about? What am I dreaming about? That is what's triggering the demons who are monitoring. And those demons are flying planes in Ontario. Those demons are working for the police department in Ontario. Those demons are working for the fire department. Those demons are working for the municipality. Those demons live and work in the city of Ontario. This is a massive prosecution of the city of Ontario. And I want to be clear, all gang stalking immigrants are hereby being documented as well. The entity that is acting as one shall be prosecuted accordingly. And then each one will stand in court, and under your name, all of that criminal conduct that you have participated in as an entity is going under your government name, and you will be prosecuted. And if you are caught gang stalking as an immigrant, you're out of this country. It is currently 8:11 a.m. This is P.O.C.